Olivia Parker, 32, stared at her phone in disbelief as her sister's text message burned into her eyes. Being a single mom is a family disgrace. You're not even invited to Thanksgiving. 6 months pregnant and newly abandoned Olivia never imagined her own family would turn against her too. What she couldn't possibly know then was how this rejection would trigger a chain of events that would completely transform the power dynamics of her entire family forever. Hey everyone, I hope that intro caught your attention. Before I dive into my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If you're enjoying family drama stories with justice served, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life revenge tales. Now let's get into how my sister's cruel words set off a series of events that would ultimately lead to the most satisfying karma I've ever witnessed. Growing up in suburban Boston, I always lived in my sister Victoria's shadow. 3 years older than me, Victoria was the embodiment of everything our conservative parents valued: perfect grades, perfect appearance, perfect obedience. By 30, she had checked all the expected boxes. Prestigious college degree, high-paying corporate job, marriage to James Wellington. A successful investment banker from an equally respectable family. Their wedding was a $200,000 affair that my parents proudly funded, complete with 350 guests and a feature in a regional bridal magazine. Our parents, Richard and Eleanor Parker, built their reputation on family values and appearances. Dad was a senior partner at a law firm specializing in corporate law for Boston's elite, while Mom was the quintessential socialite who ran the local country club's charity committee. They had crafted the perfect upper-middle-class life, and Victoria was their pride and joy, the living proof of their successful parenting. I, on the other hand, was always the family disappointment. Not because I failed at anything spectacular, but because I questioned everything. I chose to study social work instead of business or law. I volunteered at women's shelters rather than attending debutante events. I dated men my parents deemed inappropriate: artists, teachers, and once, to my mother's absolute horror, a bartender who was putting himself through graduate school. Why Can't You Be More Like Your Sister became the soundtrack of my teenage years and early 20s. Every family gathering turned into a Victoria appreciation ceremony with side commentary about my phase that my parents were sure I would eventually outgrow. When Victoria and James bought their 4-bedroom colonial in Newton's most exclusive neighborhood, my parents beamed with pride. When they announced they were trying for a baby, but only after James makes partner, my mother practically floated with joy. Meanwhile, my apartment in a more diverse neighborhood and my job counseling at-risk youth were merely tolerated topics of conversation quickly redirected to Victoria's latest achievement. Last Christmas, Victoria hosted the family gathering at her immaculate home. As we sat around their custom-made dining table, Victoria held court describing her recent promotion and the Caribbean cruise she and James were taking to celebrate. James sat beside her, occasionally checking his phone under the table, a habit I'd noticed had increased over the years. Something about their picture-perfect marriage seemed increasingly performative to me, but I kept my observations to myself. "Eleanor," my father addressed my mother formally, as he always did in public, "did you tell the girls about the country club's anniversary gala?" "Oh yes," Mom practically clapped with excitement. "Victoria, darling, we've reserved a table for you and James. It's black tie, of course. The Hendersons and the Abbotts will be at our table." I sat silently, used to these exclusions. Victoria shot me a smug look across her centerpiece of imported flowers. "Olivia," my mother added, as an afterthought, "you're welcome to come too, of course, if you'd like to bring someone." She left the sentence hanging, her expectation clear. Solo appearances at significant events were simply not done in the Parker family. What none of them knew was that I had been dating Michael Robertson for the past 8 months. Michael was brilliant, kind, and worked as an environmental engineer. He was also black, which I knew would cause my parents to have barely disguised heart palpitations. We had been keeping our relationship private, not out of shame, but because I wanted to protect what we had from my family's inevitable judgment. That night, as I drove home from Victoria's Christmas extravaganza, I called Michael, who was spending the holiday with his much more welcoming family in Chicago. "How bad was it?" he asked, knowing how these family events typically went. "The usual," I sighed. "Victoria's life is perfect, mine is a disappointment. Oh, and apparently I need to find a date for some country club gala if I want to be acknowledged by my own parents." Michael laughed warmly. "Well, I'd volunteer, but something tells me that might cause more problems than it solves." I hesitated before speaking. "Actually, I've been thinking, maybe it's time they met you. I'm tired of hiding the best part of my life because of their prejudices." "Are you sure?" Michael's voice was serious now. "I don't want to come between you and your family." "What family?" I replied, a sudden clarity washing over me. "They've never really accepted me for who I am anyway. Maybe it's time I stop trying so hard to earn a place at a table where I'll never truly be welcome." Little did I know then that this moment of defiance would be the first small ripple in what would become a tsunami of change in the Parker family dynamics. Victoria's perfect life was about to intersect with mine in ways none of us could have predicted, and the consequences would reverberate through our family for years to come. 2 months after that Christmas dinner, Michael and I were happily planning our future. We had discussed marriage, but weren't in any rush. Our relationship was solid, and we both felt secure in what we had built together. Then, one February morning, I sat on the edge of my bathtub, staring at a positive pregnancy test, a mixture of shock and unexpected joy washing over me. Michael was equally surprised, but embraced the news with characteristic thoughtfulness. "Whatever you want to do, I'm here for you," he said, holding my hands tightly. "This wasn't planned, but I love you, Olivia." After careful consideration, we decided to have the baby. Though not religious, Michael proposed anyway, saying I was going to ask eventually. This just moved up the timeline. I declined. "I love you too much to have you marry me just because of a pregnancy. Let's focus on becoming parents first. If we still want to get married later, we will, for the right reasons." Michael respected my decision, another reason why I loved him so deeply. We began preparing for our child with cautious excitement, turning my spare room into a nursery and attending parenting classes together. At 16 weeks pregnant, I finally gathered the courage to tell my family. I invited my parents to dinner at my apartment, a rare occurrence they agreed to with poorly disguised reluctance. Michael offered to be there, but I felt I needed to do this alone first. The evening was tense from the start. My mother's eyes darted around my modest apartment, cataloging what she perceived as deficiencies. My father checked his watch repeatedly, clearly counting the minutes until they could leave. After serving the main course, a recipe Michael's mother had taught me, I took a deep breath. "Mom, Dad, I have some news to share. I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother set down her fork with deliberate slowness, while my father's face flushed a dangerous shade of red. "And the father," my mother's voice was cold and clinical. "His name is Michael Robertson. We've been together for almost a year." "A year?" My father's voice rose. "And we're just hearing about him now. Who is this man? What family does he come from?" I had anticipated this reaction. "He's an environmental engineer. His father is a retired professor, and his mother is a pediatrician." My mother's expression softened slightly at these respectable professions, but her next question revealed her true concerns. "And when is the wedding? Please tell me you're not planning to have a child out of wedlock." I straightened my shoulders. "We're not getting married right now. We want to focus on being good parents first." "This is unacceptable." My father slammed his hand on the table. "No daughter of mine is going to be an unwed mother." What will people say? Have you told your sister about this shameful situation? There's nothing shameful about my pregnancy or my relationship. I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. And no, I haven't told Victoria yet. Well, don't, my mother snapped. Her in-laws are very traditional. This kind of scandal could reflect poorly on her marriage. As if on cue, my phone rang, Victoria calling. My mother's eyes widened in panic. Don't you dare tell her, she hissed. I answered anyway, putting the call on speaker defiantly. Hi, Vic. Olivia, are mom and dad with you? They're not answering their phones. Victoria's voice was tight with something I couldn't identify. They're here. We're having dinner. Well, tell them to call me immediately when they're done. It's important. James and I have an announcement. My mother practically leaped across the table to grab the phone. Victoria, darling, we're just finishing up. Is everything all right? Everything's perfect, Mother. James and I are pregnant, due in September. We wanted you to be the first to know. The transformation in my parents was instantaneous and sickening. My mother actually squealed with delight while my father beamed with pride. That's wonderful news, sweetheart. Our first grandchild. I felt like I'd been slapped. My baby due in August had just been erased completely. After several minutes of excited chatter, my parents hastily gathered their things to leave, barely acknowledging me. At the door, my mother paused. We'll discuss your situation later. Please, for your sister's sake, keep it quiet for now. This is her moment. After they left, I sat alone in my apartment, hands protectively covering my stomach, tears streaming down my face. When Michael called to check in, I could barely speak through my sobs. He was at my door 30 minutes later, wrapping me in his arms as I recounted the evening's events. Your baby matters too, Olivia, he whispered fiercely. We matter. And if your family can't see that, it's their loss, not ours. That night, as Michael held me, I made a decision. I would no longer chase my family's approval or acceptance. I would build my own family, one based on love rather than appearances. I had no idea then that Victoria's perfect pregnancy announcement would soon be overshadowed by revelations that would shatter the Parker family's carefully maintained facade. 3 weeks after that disastrous dinner, I was browsing baby furniture online when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Is this Olivia Parker? We need to talk about your sister and James. Coffee tomorrow, Melissa. My first instinct was to ignore it. Probably some drama from Victoria's social circle that I wanted no part of. But curiosity won out, and I agreed to meet at a cafe downtown far from Victoria's usual haunts. Melissa turned out to be James's administrative assistant, a petite brunette with anxious eyes who kept glancing toward the door as if expecting to be caught. After ordering, she leaned forward and spoke in a low voice. I wouldn't normally do this, but I think you should know. Your sister's husband has been having an affair with me for over 2 years. I almost choked on my water. Excuse me, Melissa pushed her phone across the table. There were dozens of messages between her and James, photos they'd exchanged, hotel receipts. The evidence was overwhelming. Why are you showing me this? I asked, pushing the phone back, feeling suddenly dirty for having seen it. Because last week I discovered I'm pregnant. When I told James, he said he'd leave Victoria for me. Then yesterday he announced that Victoria is pregnant too and ended things between us. Said it was unfortunate timing, but his family would never accept a scandal. Her bitter laugh contained no humor. He offered me money for an abortion, said it would be best for everyone. My mind was reeling. I still don't understand why you're telling me this. Because your sister deserves to know what kind of man she's married to before she has his baby. But she'd never believe me. She thinks James is perfect. Melissa's eyes welled with tears. I thought maybe she'd listen to her sister. I left that cafe in a daze, Melissa's contact information saved in my phone, my thoughts churning. The perfect James Wellington was a cheater who had gotten 2 women pregnant simultaneously. Part of me wanted to race to Victoria's house and tell her everything, but another part hesitated. Victoria and I had never been close, and she'd likely accuse me of trying to ruin her happiness out of jealousy. I needed proof she couldn't dismiss. That evening, I called Melissa again. Does James ever contact you from his personal phone, sometimes late at night, she confirmed. Would you be willing to meet with him again, just to talk somewhere public? I need to record him admitting to your relationship and the pregnancy. Melissa agreed reluctantly. 2 days later, she sent me an audio file, a recording from their meeting at a park near James's office. In it, James clearly acknowledged their affair and her pregnancy, then coldly discussed financial arrangements for her silence. Armed with this evidence, I finally felt ready to approach Victoria. I drove to her house the next morning, rehearsing what I would say, how I would be gentle yet firm. But when Victoria opened the door, her face was already streaked with tears, her usually perfect appearance disheveled. "Olivia, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice hoarse. I needed to talk to you about something important." "Are you okay?" Victoria laughed bitterly. "Am I okay? My perfect husband has been screwing his assistant for years. She's pregnant, did you know that? She sent me all their messages this morning, said I deserve to know what kind of man I'm married to." She spat out the last words, echoing what Melissa had said to me. I stood frozen on her doorstep. Melissa had gone ahead without me taking matters into her own hands. "Can I come in?" I asked gently. Victoria stepped aside, leading me to her immaculate living room, where she collapsed onto the sofa. "My whole life is a lie," she whispered. "And now I'm having his baby." Cautiously, I sat beside her. "I'm so sorry, Victoria." "Why? You've probably been waiting for me to fail at something." The familiar bite in her tone was weakened by her obvious pain. "That's not true," I said, though we both knew our relationship had always been competitive, fueled by our parents' constant comparisons. Victoria's hand moved to her still flat stomach. "What am I going to do? A divorce would destroy our family's reputation. Mom and Dad would be humiliated." And there it was. Even in her personal crisis, Victoria's first concern was for appearances and our parents' approval. "Victoria," I said carefully, "don't you think your happiness and self-respect matter more than what people will think?" She looked at me as if I'd spoken a foreign language. "You don't understand. You've always been the rebel. I'm the one who does things right. And look where that's gotten you." I responded more sharply than intended. To my surprise, Victoria didn't lash out. Instead, she broke down completely, decades of maintained perfection crumbling as she sobbed in my arms. Between tears, the truth of her perfect marriage emerged. James's emotional distance, his frequent late nights, the pressure from both sets of parents to present an ideal image to the world. "We've been trying for a baby for over a year," she admitted. "When it finally happened, I thought it would fix everything." I hesitated, then decided on honesty. "I'm pregnant too, Vic. Almost 20 weeks now." Victoria pulled back, staring at me in shock. You're not even married." "Who's the father?" "His name is Michael. We've been together for a year. He's wonderful and we're very happy about the baby." Victoria's expression hardened. "Have you told Mom and Dad?" "Yes, the night you announced your pregnancy. They made it clear my baby doesn't count as their grandchild because I'm not married." Something shifted in Victoria's eyes. A flash of recognition, perhaps, of the double standards that had always governed our family. Before she could respond, the front door opened and James walked in. Seeing me, he froze. "What is she doing here?" he demanded, glaring at Victoria. Victoria stood up suddenly, seeming taller, more formidable than I'd ever seen her. "She's my sister, James. And right now, she's the only person in my life who isn't living a lie." What followed was one of the most intense confrontations I've ever witnessed. James denied everything at first, then tried to minimize the affair when Victoria revealed she had seen all his messages. He accused Melissa of trying to trap him, suggested the baby might not even be his. His handsome face contorted with a ugliness I suspect had always been there, just carefully hidden. I stayed a silent witness to the implosion of my sister's perfect life. When James finally stormed out, Victoria turned to me with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of devastation and strange relief. "What happens now?" I asked softly. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I can't live like this anymore. I can't raise my child in a marriage built on lies." As I drove home that evening, I reflected on how quickly everything had changed. Victoria's perfect life had been revealed as a carefully maintained illusion, while my supposedly disappointing one contained genuine love and support. I had no idea then that the real family earthquake was yet to come, or that Victoria's next actions would set in motion a reckoning that would change all our lives forever. Hey everyone, I can see we're at a major turning point in my story, and I know many of you are probably wondering what happened next between Victoria and James and how our parents reacted to all of this. Before I continue, I'd love to hear if any of you have experienced family betrayals that forced you to reevaluate relationships you thought were solid. This part of my journey was incredibly emotional, and sharing it brings back so many memories. If you're finding this story relatable or interesting, please hit that like button to let me know, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. The fallout from these revelations completely changed our family dynamic in ways I never could have imagined. The weekend after the confrontation with James, Victoria did something that shocked me. She called and asked to meet Michael. "I need to see for myself what kind of man my sister chose," she explained, her voice lacking its usual judgment. We arranged to meet at my apartment, neutral territory. When Victoria arrived, her appearance startled me. Gone was the perfectly coiffed socialite. In her place stood a woman in jeans and a simple sweater, her face bare of makeup, her designer handbag replaced by a practical tote. Michael was naturally charming, offering Victoria tea and treating her with a warmth she hardly deserved given our history. As the afternoon progressed, I watched my sister's rigid posture gradually relax. She asked Michael thoughtful questions about his work, his family, his hopes for our baby. For the first time in our adult lives, Victoria seemed genuinely interested in my life rather than competing with it. "I filed for divorce yesterday," she announced suddenly during a lull in conversation. "James tried to convince me to stay, promised to end things with Melissa, but..." She shook her head. "Once I started seeing the cracks in our marriage, I couldn't unsee them." "How did Mom and Dad take it?" I asked carefully. Victoria's bitter laugh answered before her words did. "They suggested we sweep it under the rug." Dad's exact words were, "Every marriage has its difficulties. Think of your family's reputation." She mimicked our father's authoritative tone perfectly. When I refused, Mom actually said I should consider what this would do to Dad's standing at the firm, as if that should be my primary concern. Michael excused himself tactfully, giving us space to talk. Once he left the room, Victoria looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I've spent my entire life trying to be what they wanted. The perfect daughter, the perfect wife, and for what? The moment I needed them to prioritize me, just once, they chose appearances instead." She placed her hand on her slightly rounded belly. "I won't do that to my child. I won't teach them that other people's opinions matter more than their own happiness." I reached for her hand, our first genuine moment of sisterly connection in decades. "What will you do now? I don't know. James is threatening to fight for full custody, claiming I'm emotionally unstable. His family has connections everywhere." Fear flickered across her face. "I've never been on my own before." The vulnerability in my usually invincible sister moved me deeply. "You're not on your own," I said firmly. You have me. Victoria looked skeptical. Why would you help me after how I've treated you all these years? I considered this, because despite everything, you're my sister. And because now more than ever I understand how much our parents' expectations shape both of us. You into the perfect daughter, me into the perpetual disappointment. Neither role was fair. 2 days later, Victoria called again, her voice shaking with rage. James froze all our accounts. His lawyer says since I'm not working, I need to be reasonable about the divorce terms or he'll make things difficult. She took a shuddering breath. And you won't believe what Mom said when I called for help. She asked if it wasn't too late to reconsider because divorce would complicate the baby's future. That conversation was the catalyst for what happened next. Victoria and I decided to confront our parents together to make them see how their obsession with appearances had damaged both their daughters in different ways. We arranged to meet at their house the following Sunday, traditionally reserved for their post-church brunch. When we arrived together, our parents were visibly surprised. They had expected Victoria alone coming to announce her reconciliation with James, no doubt. Their expressions turned wary when they saw us united. Victoria Olivia, our mother, greeted us stiffly. This is unexpected. We need to talk. Victoria stated firmly, her newfound resolve evident in her posture. In their formal living room, with family photos depicting our supposedly perfect lives arranged precisely on the mantel, Victoria revealed everything. James's affair, the pregnancy of his mistress, his attempts to control her through financial manipulation, and our parents' disappointing response to her crisis. I needed parents, Victoria's voice broke, not reputation managers. Our father's face hardened. You're being dramatic, Victoria. Every marriage has its challenges. Your mother and I have worked through plenty. Like what, Dad? I interjected. What great challenges have you and Mom overcome that make you qualified to tell Victoria to stay with a serial cheater? The look he gave me was venomous. You're hardly in a position to give anyone advice on relationships, Olivia. At least Victoria had the decency to get married before getting pregnant. That's enough, Victoria snapped, surprising all of us with her forceful tone. Olivia is in a committed, loving relationship with a man who respects her. That's more than I can say for the husband you were so proud of me for catching. Our mother, who had remained silent, finally spoke. Victoria, darling, you're upset. Pregnancy hormones make women emotional. Perhaps in a few weeks when you've calmed down. I am calm, Mother Victoria interrupted. Calmer than I've been in years, actually. For the first time, I'm seeing clearly what matters and what doesn't. And what exactly is that supposed to mean? Our father demanded. Victoria straightened her shoulders. It means I'm done pretending. Done caring more about how things look than how they feel. Done prioritizing your approval over my own happiness. Our mother's face paled. You don't mean that. You're just upset about James. This isn't just about James, I interjected. It's about how you've treated both of us our entire lives. Victoria was only valuable when she was perfect. I was barely valuable at all. Our father stood abruptly. I will not sit here and be lectured by my own daughters about parenting. We gave you everything. The best schools, the best opportunities. And this is how you repay us. With accusations and ingratitude, Victoria rose to meet him eye to eye. You gave us things, Dad. What you never gave either of us was unconditional love. The silence that followed was deafening. Our mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, while our father's jaw worked silently as if chewing on words too bitter to speak. Victoria, our mother finally said, her voice soft but calculated. You need to consider your position carefully. If you proceed with this divorce, if you insist on airing the family's dirty laundry, there will be consequences. Your father and I have supported you in everything, financially and otherwise. That support is not unconditional. The threat hung in the air between us. Victoria looked at me, then back at our parents. Are you saying you'll cut me off if I don't stay in a marriage that makes me miserable? We're saying, our father clarified coldly, that actions have consequences. Your sister made her choices and lives with them. Now you must decide what matters more to you, your family legacy, or this temporary emotional crisis. I couldn't remain silent. Is that what happened to me? I made choices you didn't approve of, so I was written off. And now you're threatening Victoria with the same punishment. You chose to walk away from everything we valued. Our father replied, dismissively. Victoria has always understood the importance of family. Family. Victoria's laugh was hollow. This isn't family. It's a business arrangement with blood relations. She stood and gathered her things. I filed for divorce 3 days ago. I'm moving out of the house next week. And for the first time in my life, I'm going to figure out who I am without your approval defining my worth. Our mother gasped. Victoria, think of the baby. A child needs stability, a proper home. My child will have a proper home, Victoria stated firmly. One built on honesty and real love, not appearances and social climbing. As we walked toward the door, our father called after us. If you walk out that door, Victoria, don't expect our help when this all falls apart. And you, he pointed at me, encouraging your sister's breakdown won't change your status in this family. Victoria paused, her hand on the doorknob. What exactly is my sister's status in this family, Dad? Our father's expression was stone. Olivia made her choices long ago. And now she's having a child with that man. She's chosen to live outside our values, outside our family. Victoria turned to face them one last time. Being a single mother isn't a family disgrace, and if Olivia isn't invited to Thanksgiving, then neither am I. With those words echoing the title of my story, we walked out together, leaving our stunned parents behind. In the driveway, Victoria leaned against her car, suddenly looking exhausted. Did I just burn my entire life to the ground? She whispered. I took her hand. No. You just cleared space to build something better. We stood there in silence for a moment, two pregnant sisters at a crossroads, united for perhaps the first time in our adult lives. Neither of us could have predicted then just how much would change in the coming months, or the shocking revelations that would rock our family to its core. I hope you're all still with me on this journey. The confrontation with my parents was one of the most difficult moments of my life, but also one of the most liberating. Have any of you had to stand up to family members who tried to control you through conditional love and support? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If you're finding value in my story, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more authentic family stories that might help you navigate your own relationships. Now, let's continue to the next part where things take an even more unexpected turn. In the weeks following our confrontation with our parents, Victoria and I developed a relationship that neither of us had thought possible. She moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment near mine, away from the affluent neighborhood she'd shared with James. The transition wasn't easy. Victoria had never lived alone, never paid her own bills, never even furnished a space without an interior designer's help. But with each small victory of independence, I watched my sister transform. James, meanwhile, was waging a vicious campaign to intimidate Victoria into a favorable divorce settlement. He spread rumors in their social circle that Victoria was mentally unstable, threatened to fight for full custody of their unborn child, and continued to restrict her access to their marital assets. His family's connections meant many doors that should have been open to Victoria suddenly closed. I need a lawyer who isn't afraid of the Wellington name. Victoria confessed one evening as we sat in her half-furnished living room sorting through baby clothes we'd purchased together. Every attorney I've approached either already works with James's family or suddenly becomes too busy to take my case after an initial consultation. I hesitated, then pulled out my phone. I might know someone. A client of mine at the women's shelter had a similar situation. Husband with powerful connections trying to bully her in divorce proceedings. Her lawyer was amazing, absolutely fearless. The attorney, Diane Morales, agreed to meet with Victoria the next day. Sharp, direct, and utterly unimpressed by family names or social standing, Diane listened to Victoria's story without interruption, then laid out a strategic plan that made even my composed sister blink in surprise. He wants to play dirty, fine. But he should know that prenuptial agreements can be invalidated when there's evidence of fraud or coercion, Diane stated, reviewing the document Victoria had signed before her wedding. And his affair, especially with an employee who's now pregnant, opens him up to significant liability, both personally and professionally. For the first time since her marriage imploded, Victoria smiled with genuine hope. "You'll take my case." "With pleasure," Diane replied. "I've dealt with men like James Wellington my entire career. They're bullies who collapse when faced with real resistance." Armed with Diane's confidence and my emotional support, Victoria began to fight back, but our unexpected alliance had not gone unnoticed by our parents. 2 weeks after Victoria hired Diane, our mother appeared at my apartment unannounced. "We need to talk, Olivia," she said briskly, barely glancing at my now prominent baby bump as I let her in. "Your father and I are concerned about the influence you're having on your sister." I laughed incredulously. "The influence I'm having, Victoria, is 35 years old, Mother. She's making her own decisions." Victoria was raised to understand certain expectations. The Wellington connection is extremely valuable to your father's practice. This divorce is causing considerable awkwardness. "Awkwardness," I repeated. "James cheated on Victoria for years, got another woman pregnant, and is now trying to leave her financially stranded. And you're worried about awkwardness," my mother waved dismissively. "These things happen in marriages of a certain caliber. Discretion used to be understood." Meaning what? Victoria should have turned a blind eye to her husband's infidelity to preserve your social connections. I'm saying there were better ways to handle this situation than a public divorce that benefits no one. She adjusted her perfectly tailored jacket. "Your father and I would like to meet with both of you to discuss a more family-oriented resolution." Something in her tone made me uneasy. What kind of resolution? Victoria belongs with her husband preparing for their child. This rebellious phase needs to end before permanent damage is done to all our reputations. I stared at my mother, suddenly seeing her. Really seeing her. Perhaps for the first time. "Did Dad cheat on you, Mother? Is that why you think Victoria should just accept it?" The flash of pain across her carefully composed face told me everything. "That is not an appropriate question." "It's the only question that matters," I pressed. "Have you spent your entire marriage looking the other way while Dad had affairs? Is that the example you want Victoria and me to follow?" My mother gathered her handbag, her knuckles white from gripping it too tightly. "Your father and I built a life of respect and stability. We gave both of you every advantage. If certain compromises were made along the way, they served a greater purpose." "What purpose?" I demanded. "What could possibly justify staying with someone who repeatedly betrays you?" "Family legacy," she snapped, her composure finally cracking. "Something you've never valued. The Parker name means something in this community. It opens doors, creates opportunities. Your father's position, on our social standing. These things matter, Olivia. They're worth protecting. Even at the cost of your daughter's happiness. Happiness is fleeting. Position and security are not." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Tell Victoria we expect to see both of you at the house this Sunday, 3 o'clock. There are matters that need to be addressed." After she left, I immediately called Victoria to relay the conversation. Her response surprised me. "Maybe we should go," she said thoughtfully. "I have a feeling there's more going on here than Mom's usual status anxiety." "What do you mean?" "Something Diane discovered while investigating James's finances." There are some unusual transfers between Dad's accounts and the Wellington family businesses going back years. I think there might be financial entanglements we don't know about. Victoria's instinct proved correct. That Sunday, we arrived at our parents' house together, bracing for another confrontation. Instead, we found them unnervingly cordial, almost desperate to appear welcoming. "Girls, thank you for coming," our father began once we were seated in his study, the room where he'd always conducted the most serious family discussions. "Your mother and I have been reflecting on our recent disagreements. We feel it's time for some honesty." Victoria and I exchanged skeptical glances. "I've spoken with Gerald Wellington," he continued, referring to James's father. "We agree that family unity must be our priority now, with 2 grandchildren on the way." "Two?" Victoria questioned sharply. Our father looked uncomfortable. "James has admitted to certain indiscretions, but he's willing to take responsibility for both children if discretion is maintained." "Meaning what exactly?" I asked. "Meaning Victoria would return home, the divorce petition would be withdrawn, and appropriate financial arrangements would be made for the other woman." Victoria's laugh was cold. "You can't be serious. You expect me to go back to a marriage that was a lie from the beginning?" "I expect you to consider your child's future," our father replied sternly. "The Wellingtons are willing to be very generous. James has agreed to a post-nuptial agreement that would protect you financially." "In exchange for my silence and compliance," Victoria stated flatly. "No, thank you." Our father's expression darkened. "Victoria, you don't understand what's at stake here." "Then explain it to me." Our mother, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke. "Richard, they need to know. All of it." He shot her a warning look, but she continued. "They're not children anymore, and this situation affects them both." For a moment, our father seemed to age before our eyes. Then, with a defeated sigh, he opened his desk drawer and withdrew a thick folder. 28 years ago, when the firm was struggling, I made some decisions that, while technically legal, wouldn't withstand close scrutiny. As he explained, the truth of our family's legacy unraveled. Our father had helped Gerald Wellington hide significant assets during his first divorce using creative accounting and offshore accounts. In return, Wellington had invested heavily in my father's then-struggling law firm, effectively saving it from bankruptcy. This initial ethical compromise had evolved into decades of financial interdependence, with both families' fortunes now inextricably linked. If James and Victoria divorce, our father concluded, and if it becomes contentious, financial investigations could expose arrangements that would ruin both families. Victoria sat in stunned silence before finally asking, "So all those years of pushing me toward James, the lavish wedding you insisted on, it wasn't about love or even social status. It was about protecting your financial schemes. It was about securing your future," our father insisted. "The Wellingtons are one of the wealthiest families in Massachusetts. We wanted that security for you. And for yourselves," I added quietly. Our mother at least had the grace to look ashamed. "We did what we thought was best." Victoria stood abruptly. "I want copies of everything. All the documentation of these arrangements you've been hiding." "That would be extremely unwise," our father warned. "No, what's unwise is continuing to treat your daughters like pawns in some dynastic chess game." Victoria's voice was steel. "You have 24 hours to provide those documents to my lawyer, or I'll instruct her to request them as part of discovery in my divorce proceedings." Our father blanched. "You wouldn't." "Try me," Victoria challenged. "I'm done being manipulated. Either you give me what I need to protect myself, or I'll take down this house of cards myself." In that moment, I saw my sister not just as the perfect daughter she'd been groomed to be, but as a formidable woman in her own right. And for the first time in my life, I saw real fear in our father's eyes. True to her word, Victoria had Diane file for comprehensive financial discovery in her divorce proceedings the very next day. The response was immediate and telling. James's attorney reached out within hours, suddenly eager to discuss a settlement. "They're panicking," Diane observed with satisfaction during our strategy meeting in her office. "The question is, how far are you willing to push this?" Victoria looked at me, then back at Diane. "All the way. I want full financial disclosure, fair division of assets, and most importantly, I want protection for my child from whatever fallout might come from their father's actions." Over the next 3 weeks, the carefully constructed facade of both the Parker and Wellington family empires began to crumble. Our father made increasingly desperate attempts to convince Victoria to drop her demands for full financial transparency, alternating between threats and pleading. "You're destroying everything I've built," he raged, during one particularly heated phone call that Victoria had put on speaker for me to hear. "Is that what you want? To see your family name dragged through the mud?" "What I want," Victoria replied calmly, "is the truth, something this family has been severely lacking." As Victoria's case progressed, I approached my due date with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Michael had moved in with me, transforming my apartment into a cozy nest for our coming baby. His family visited frequently, bringing home-cooked meals and genuine warmth that stood in stark contrast to the emotional coldness I'd grown up with. Then, just 2 weeks before my due date, everything accelerated. Victoria received an urgent call from Diane. "They want to meet," she told me afterward, her expression troubled. "All of them. James, his parents, our parents. Apparently they have a proposition that will satisfy everyone's interests." "It sounds like a trap," I warned. "Agreed. Which is why Diane will be there, and why I want you and Michael to come too." The meeting was set for the following evening at a private conference room in Diane's office building, neutral territory. When we arrived, the tension was palpable. James sat beside his parents, looking simultaneously arrogant and uneasy. Our parents sat across from them, our father's usually commanding presence diminished somehow. At the head of the table, Diane projected confident authority. Once everyone was seated, Gerald Wellington took the lead. "We're here to resolve a situation that has gotten out of hand. Our families have been connected for decades, and despite recent difficulties, we believe a mutually beneficial resolution is possible." "What exactly are you proposing?" Victoria asked directly. James's mother, Patricia Wellington, slid a document folder across the table. "A comprehensive settlement. James will provide generous financial support, shared custody with primary residence with you, and a substantial trust fund for the child." In exchange for what Victoria's voice was skeptical, Gerald cleared his throat. "In exchange for amended divorce filings that don't require detailed financial discovery and a confidentiality agreement regarding certain family business matters." I watched Victoria carefully review the documents with Diane, their expressions revealing nothing. After several minutes, Victoria looked up. "This offer addresses my relationship with James, but not the broader issues involving our family's financial entanglements." "Those matters are separate from your divorce," our father interjected quickly. "Are they?" Victoria challenged. "Because from what I've seen, my marriage was just another business arrangement designed to protect those entanglements." James slammed his hand on the table. "This is ridiculous. We're offering you a more than fair settlement. Take it and stop this vendetta." "It's not a vendetta," Victoria replied evenly. "It's a demand for honesty after a lifetime of manipulation." She turned to our parents. "Did either of you ever consider what you were sacrificing by building your lives on secrets and appearances?" Our mother looked away while our father's jaw tightened. "We gave you everything," he insisted. "Except the truth," I found myself saying. "Except the freedom to make our own choices." Gerald Wellington's patience visibly thinned. "This sentimentality is unproductive. The offer on the table is generous but not unlimited. Victoria, you need to decide what matters more: your principles or your child's future security. Victoria stood slowly, one hand resting protectively on her baby bump. That's the problem with men like you. You think principles and security are mutually exclusive. You use money as a weapon and family as a shield for your own ambitions. She gathered the documents and handed them back to Diane. Revise the settlement to include full financial disclosure to me and my attorney, with a guarantee that those documents remain sealed unless there's any attempt to violate the custody or support agreements. Include provisions for both my child and Melissa's to receive equal financial support and inheritance rights. The mention of Melissa's baby caused James to pale visibly. Additionally, Victoria continued, I want written acknowledgement that any professional or personal retaliation against me, my sister, or Michael will result in those seals being broken. This is extortion, Gerald sputtered. No, Diane corrected calmly. This is negotiation from a position of strength. My client has evidence that could trigger investigations from multiple regulatory bodies. She's offering you a path to resolution that protects the children involved while holding the adults accountable. The next 2 hours involved intense negotiation with tempers flaring repeatedly. Throughout it all, Victoria remained composed, yielding on minor points while standing firm on her core demands. By the end, a revised agreement was drafted that met her primary conditions. As we prepared to leave, our father approached me privately. I don't understand why you're encouraging this, he said bitterly. Victoria had everything, and now she's throwing it away. She had what you wanted for her, I corrected him. Now she's choosing what she wants for herself and her child. He shook his head. And you? What do you want, Olivia? You're about to have a baby with a man who can't provide the kind of life we work to give you. I looked across the room at Michael, who was engaged in conversation with Victoria, his expression attentive and kind. I have exactly the kind of life I want, Dad. One based on love and honesty rather than appearances and advantages. For a moment, something like regret flickered across my father's face. I've always wanted what was best for both of you. No, I said gently. You wanted what you thought was best without ever asking what we needed or wanted. There's a difference. 3 days later, Victoria signed the revised settlement agreement. That same evening, my water broke. Michael rushed me to the hospital, and Victoria arrived moments later, refusing to leave until she'd seen her niece or nephew safely arrived. After 16 hours of labor, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Sophia Eleanor Robertson. As I held her in my arms with Michael beside me and Victoria hovering tearfully nearby, I felt a profound sense of peace. The family legacy I would pass to my daughter wouldn't be one of secrets and appearances, but of truth and love. What none of us could have predicted was how Sophia's birth would trigger the final act in our family's transformation. One that would bring the karma full circle in ways none of us could have imagined. 1 week after Sophia's birth, Victoria went into labor unexpectedly nearly a month before her due date. Michael and I rushed to the hospital with Sophia in tow, arriving just in time to offer support during a difficult delivery. After several tense hours, Victoria gave birth to a baby boy whom she named Alexander Richard Parker, maintaining our family name rather than James's. The first weeks of motherhood bonded Victoria and me in ways I never thought possible. We established a rhythm of support, taking turns with nighttime feedings when one of us was particularly exhausted, sharing baby supplies, and offering each other emotional support during moments of overwhelming uncertainty. James visited his son exactly twice, both times with his mother in tow, treating the occasions more like business appointments than family visits. After the second awkward encounter, Victoria made a decision. I don't want Alexander growing up thinking that's what a father looks like, she confided to me one evening as we sat in my living room, both babies sleeping nearby. Distant obligatory cold. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "I'm thinking about what real family means," she replied thoughtfully. "And I realize I've seen more of it in the last few months with you and Michael than I ever did growing up or during my marriage." Michael, who had been quietly preparing dinner in the kitchen, joined us. "Alexander is always welcome here," he said simply. "So are you, Victoria." 2 days later, we received unexpected news. Melissa James's former assistant had given birth to a daughter. When Victoria heard this, she did something that shocked me. She reached out to Melissa and invited her to join our impromptu new mothers support group. Initially skeptical and defensive, Melissa gradually warmed to Victoria when she realized there was no animosity, only a shared understanding of James's manipulation. Soon, she too became part of our unconventional family circle, bringing little Emma for playdates with her half-brother and cousin. Our parents, meanwhile, maintained a cool distance. They sent expensive gifts for both babies, but made little effort to be involved in their lives. The Wellington family was even more remote, fulfilling their financial obligations while showing minimal interest in either child born from their sons' relationships. Then 6 months after the births, the carefully constructed settlement began to unravel. James, apparently feeling secure in his position, started missing support payments and attempting to renegotiate visitation terms. When Victoria's lawyer confronted him, he responded with thinly veiled threats about family consequences. Victoria had anticipated this possibility. With Diane's guidance, she had maintained copies of all the financial documentation uncovered during the divorce proceedings. Now faced with James's renewed manipulation, she made a calculated decision. "I'm not letting Alexander grow up watching his father use money as a weapon," she declared. "It's time to break this cycle once and for all." What followed was what the local press would later call the Wellington Parker disclosure. Victoria didn't go public with the documents herself. Instead, she provided them confidentially to regulatory authorities who had the power to investigate properly. The results were seismic. Investigations revealed decades of financial improprieties, tax evasion, and ethical violations that extended far beyond what even Victoria had suspected. Both our father's law firm and the Wellington family businesses came under intense scrutiny. In the midst of this unfolding scandal, our mother appeared at my door one rainy afternoon looking uncharacteristically disheveled. "May I come in?" she asked hesitantly, a vulnerability in her voice I'd never heard before. I invited her inside, where Sophia was practicing her newly acquired crawling skills under Michael's watchful eye. My mother watched her granddaughter with an expression of wistful longing. "She's beautiful," she said softly. "She has your determination." "What brings you here, Mom?" I asked directly. She sat heavily on my sofa, looking suddenly much older than her years. "Your father has been indicted. The firm is collapsing. The Wellingtons." She trailed off. "Everything we built is falling apart." I waited, unsure what response she expected from me. I didn't know she finally continued. "Not everything, anyway. I knew there were arrangements, connections that benefited us financially, but I didn't know the extent." She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Or maybe I chose not to know. It was easier. "What happens now?" I asked. "Your father may face prison time. We'll certainly lose most of what we have. The house, the country club memberships, our standing in the community, it's all gone." Michael tactfully excused himself, with Sophia giving us privacy. "I'm sorry about Dad," I said and meant it. Despite everything, I took no joy in my father's downfall. My mother nodded. "I've spent my entire life defining myself by your father's success, by our social position, by what others thought of us." She looked around my modest but warm apartment, and look where that led us. We sat in silence for several minutes before she spoke again. "I don't expect forgiveness, especially from Victoria, but I'd like a chance to know my grandchildren. To be the grandmother I should have been from the beginning. 2 weeks later, we held an impromptu family gathering. Victoria with Alexander, Melissa with Emma, Michael, and I with Sophia, and tentatively our mother. It was awkward at first, decades of dysfunction not easily overcome. But as the afternoon progressed, something shifted. Watching our mother gently rock Emma while Victoria prepared bottles and Michael entertained, Alexander I glimpsed the possibility of a new kind of family emerging from the ashes of the old. My father, facing multiple charges, chose to cooperate with investigators in exchange for a reduced sentence. The Wellington Empire similarly crumbled, with James and his father both facing significant legal consequences for their actions. The family's social standing, once seemingly untouchable, disintegrated under the weight of public scrutiny. 1 year after the baby's births, our unconventional family had established new traditions and patterns. Victoria had discovered a talent for financial management, ironically using skills she'd observed but never been encouraged to develop in our status-focused upbringing. She started a small consulting business, helping women navigate financial independence after divorce. Melissa, initially the most hesitant member of our circle, found unexpected strength in single motherhood, returning to school to complete the education that had been interrupted by her involvement with James. Our mother, stripped of the wealth and status that had defined her for decades, slowly revealed a woman none of us had known existed. One with a dry sense of humor, a talent for storytelling, and a genuine desire to connect with her grandchildren without the artifice that had characterized her previous relationships. As for me, the journey from family disappointment to family cornerstone had been unexpected but profoundly fulfilling. Michael and I married in a simple ceremony when Sophia was 18 months old, surrounded by our chosen family: Victoria, Alexander, Melissa, Emma, Michael's loving parents and siblings, and yes, even our mother, who wore a department store dress rather than designer clothing for perhaps the first time in her adult life. The day Victoria received the final legal notice that her divorce settlement had been fully executed and all investigations concluded, we gathered for a celebratory dinner. As we sat around my expanded dining table, babies babbling in high chairs, while adults passed dishes, family-style, Victoria raised her glass. "To karma," she said with a smile, "and to finding real family after losing a false one." I looked around at the faces gathered there, at Victoria no longer defined by perfectionism and appearances, at Melissa growing confident in her new independence, at our mother humbled but gradually finding authentic connections, at Michael, whose steady love had given me the courage to stand firm in my own worth, and at the 3 cousins who would grow up understanding that family is defined by love and support, not status or advantage. My sister once said, being a single mom is a family disgrace. You're not even invited to Thanksgiving. I recalled meeting Victoria's eyes across the table. But look at us now. Victoria laughed, the sound free and genuine. I was so wrong about so many things. Thank you for showing me what really matters. As we continued our meal, sharing stories and making plans for the future, I reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought us here. The family legacy I had once been told I was tarnishing had been built on deception and manipulation all along. Its collapse, painful as it was, had created space for something more authentic to grow, a family defined not by appearances or advantages, but by genuine love, mutual support, and the courage to live truthfully. And that, I realized as I looked at my daughter happily playing with her cousins, was the greatest legacy I could possibly pass on. Thank you all so much for staying with me through this entire story. It's been a journey to share this with you, and it brings back so many emotions. I'm curious, have any of you experienced family situations where karma eventually caught up with those who deserved it, or times when family betrayal ultimately led to something better in your life? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and would love to hear your stories too. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button to let me know. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more real-life family stories with lessons we can all learn from. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing about overcoming family betrayal or building authentic relationships, please share this video with them. Thank you again for being here. Remember that sometimes losing what you thought was family opens the door to finding what family truly means. Until next time, take care of yourselves and the relationships that genuinely nourish your soul.